Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the YellaWood 500 at Talladega Superspeedway on Sunday, October 4th at around 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you guys have been watching my videos for quite some time, you already know I love Superspeedway races, not only from a DFS perspective, but from a fan standpoint as well. We get that nice, close pack racing. You're not going to see Kevin Harvick get a 10-second lead here at a track like Daytona or Talladega. Everyone is pretty much just right there with each other. You're going to see multiple lead changes, and there's always the chance of the big one happening as well, which tends to happen more than it doesn't. So pretty excited for this race. I'm sure you guys are as well. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like. I know it's something small, just leaving a like on a video, but the more you guys interact with my content, leaving likes, leaving comments, and all that fun stuff, it's going to help me out, and I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit the subscribe button. I'm here all season long trying to help you guys become better NASCAR DFS players. And yes, I know it's October now, so the season is coming to a close. But NASCAR goes from early February to mid-November for the most part, so there's really not much time off. So I'm pretty much covering NASCAR content throughout the entire, besides a couple of months. And in those couple of months, I am covering NFL at the same time. So if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit the subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at Pennell16 over on Twitter, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, it's always much appreciated. And it is the best time to sign up because it is the first of the month, and that's when you get your best bang for the buck. So if you're interested, links down below. You get access into all of my extra NASCAR DFS content, which I put a ton of work into each and every single week. I am dead tired right now. I just got done writing the article, and I just got done updating the spreadsheet, which does take some time to do. So if you're interested in the content, you get access to the projections, which have been pretty good this season. They've taken down multiple tournaments. The power rankings, which is just algorithm based, just based off of numbers. There's no bias in there with me. I have some biased personal tier rankings that I do, but that's just an algorithm based rankings on some other statistics that are on there. Green flag speed cheat sheet, which is huge, is what I've been using a lot this season since there's been no practice. The cheat sheet, my own GPP driver exposures, the heat map, the previous optimal lineups, the 2020 optimal lineups, past Talladega slate analysis, looking at ownership and whatnot, and starting position track stats, and there's a bunch of other stuff on there as well. So if you're interested, links down below. If not, that's fine. Let's just get into the preview of this race. And also, I'm almost at like 1,500 followers on Twitter. So if we could hit 1,500, that would be absolutely awesome. I do appreciate that. You guys can hit me up on Twitter. I'll try to reply to you. Sometimes I can get a little bit lazy on checking my Twitter DMs, but even if I'm a couple days late, I usually tend to get back with people. So feel free to follow me over there if you want to hit me up sometime or just check out the tweets, because I do post sometimes some interesting DFS stuff for NASCAR on Twitter, and I mostly just post personal stuff on Instagram for the most part. But if you want to see my Warzone victories or what I'm eating that night on Instagram, feel free to follow me over there as well. But now I think we can get to the preview of this race. So this is the YellaWood 500, and there's your outline of the track. It's a very, very large track. It's a little bit over 2.5 miles in length, and this is Talladega Superspeedway. It is a restrictor plate track. Now I know technically they use more of a tapered spacer now, but I still like calling it a restrictor plate. That's what I'm used to saying. So if I keep saying that during the video, just know it's what I'm used to saying. And I know what it is now for real, but it's a restrictor plate race. It's 2.66 miles in length, and we have 188 laps on tap, which means we only have 141 Dominator points available. And the big thing at super speedways is, so for example, let's say Kevin Harvick, he's in first at a track like Dover, and he leads 200 laps. There's a good chance he's picking up the majority of those fast laps. But at a track like Daytona or Talladega, the fast laps are completely random through the field. Like, you're going to see guys you wouldn't expect to get fast laps. Like, I think last time we were at Daytona, I want to say Ty Dillon had he had a handful of fast laps, which is not going to happen in a regular racetrack. But people are going to be drafting, and just whoever's got the best draft in that lap is going to pick up the fast laps, and you cannot project that. I do not put fast laps in my projections at super speedways. I just completely ignore the stat. I do some lap sled statistics because you can kind of usually figure out who's going to lead laps at Talladega. It's usually the same suspects every single time. Ricky Stenhouse, Joey Logano, Hamlin, Keselowski, those kind of guys, Ryan Blaney. But you can't really project fast laps, and with that being said, Dominator points are really nothing I am going to put any consideration into. I mean, yeah, there's guys I'm going to target in the early teens or in the top 10 that I think can win this race, but for the most part, you want to just focus on place differential here. Now, I'm not saying you have to just build full lineups of scrubs like Brennan Poole, Joey Gase, and a couple of others. Those guys, I don't really think that's the best strategy. Now, there's some cases where it works, but sometimes I feel like Talladega yeah, it can be as hectic as Daytona, but I don't know. I just have a feeling some of these Talladega races tend to be just a little bit more tame, although it's very up or down. I was looking at some of the DNF statistics, and looking at the past fall races, I think the last 3 races had 15 DNF cars, then 1 DNF car, then 26 DNF. So it's kind of been a mixed bag. We'll see how it goes. Now, this year, the cautions really haven't been happening until very late in the race, and we actually saw in the Talladega race in June, there wasn't really a wreck until the very final lap. So if you guys were stacking scrubs, which I had no problem doing, and if that wreck would have happened earlier than the final lap, yeah, it could have worked out better than it did, but unfortunately, it happened in the last lap, so those guys didn't really get to pass those guys once they accumulated some other laps. So it's kind of a mixed bag there, but for the most part, you do want to focus on place differential guys. But if you're playing cash games, I would really recommend guys like Timmy Hill. I think you can use guys like Ty Dillon back there, Ryan Preece. Stenhouse doesn't really count as a scrub driver back there, but you got Corey LaJoie back there. I think those guys are fine. Obviously, Brendan Gaughan, which I'll talk about, but DraftKings did price him up, and I think they did a very good job on that, which I will get to. But I think that's pretty much it for the strategy. For cash games, focus on place differential. In tournaments, you can target a couple of drivers starting near the top 10 or the top 15 that you think can win the race, like Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and guys I will talk about. But that's pretty much it for the strategy. Do not play guys like Martin Truex and Kevin Harvick thinking you're locking up dominators, because that's pretty much irrelevant here. And I think that's pretty much it for the preview. We're 7 minutes in, and I haven't went over really any drivers yet, so I'm sure most of you aren't happy with me. But anyway, let's just now get into the driver-by-driver breakdown. And to keep it simple, guys, the guys that are starting further back are going to be overall the better plays, but there are some guys I like quite a bit in tournaments that are starting in the teens range and, the top 10 as well, and I'll break that down. But up top, we have Chase Elliott at 10,500. Also, one thing to keep in mind is salary is not important at a track like this. Over the years, or not over the years. So before this year, DraftKings has priced guys relative to where they're starting, and that was never the case. So there's always typically a bunch of salary left over at a track like Daytona or Talladega. Now with them pricing guys up like Brendan Gaughan at almost $10,000. If this was a regular like a couple of years ago, Brendan Gaughan's not even coming close to that. You got Stenhouse at nearly $9,000, which again would not be the case. So you're probably not making many lineups that have like $10,000 left over. Yeah, you can make a couple lineups where you're just going full scrubs and just hoping it's a complete wreck fest, because yeah, that can certainly work out. I remember one Daytona race, I'm pretty sure the optimal lineup had pretty much all the drivers starting like 35th or 33rd and back. It was crazy, and that can happen, but I think I lost my train of thought. So before I forget anymore, let's just get into Chase Elliott. He comes in at 10,500. He is starting 10th, and I think he's a fine option. Now, he was part of that group that was pretty chalky. So I said in my last Talladega video that I loved playing loved playing the back guys, sorry. And I had quite a bit of interest in some of these teens drivers, which was Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, I think Denny Hamlin, and Ryan Blaney. And Ryan Blaney did very well. Joey Logano was pretty good for most of the race, but he ended up not finishing that well. I forget what happened with Denny Hamlin. And then Chase Elliott, I believe he wrecked out early. And he was one of those guys that were a little bit chalky. Logano was pretty chalky. Chase Elliott was chalky. And Ryan Blaney were chalky. And I could actually see that being the case once again, because you got Elliott starting 10th, you got Logano starting 8th, and you got Ryan Blaney starting 14th. So I feel like the same group of drivers that were decently high owned that were starting in the top 15 last Talladega race is probably going to carry over to this one as well. But Chase Elliott, he's a fine option here. I mean, his numbers at Talladega, they're fine. Average finish of 16.2, 24.5 DraftKings points per race, but it's just all a matter of missing the wrecks. If he misses the wrecks, he should have a pretty strong day. He did very well at the Daytona race about a month ago. Indy is a recent winner here at Talladega. He's got 2 top 5s recently as well, and some of the most laps led per race too. And if you're looking at his numbers at super speedways, yeah, he's gotten caught up in quite a bit of wrecks, so it's kind of hard to look at these numbers. And the thing is, with these types of tracks, the guys that tend to get caught up in the wrecks are the good cars, like Chase Elliott. They're making aggressive moves. Joey Logano, he's probably going to throw out a stupid block like he does every single week. And one stupid block or one aggressive move, and you're just off by a little bit, it can send the whole field wrecking. We know that. So, and the guys that are wrecking are going to be those good cars, and the cars in the back like Corey LaJoie, Ryan Preece, Ty Dillon, they're just chilling back there, Brendan Gaughan, and they're just waiting for the wrecks to happen, and they're just trying to get good finishes. They're not really out here to win the race. Yeah, Ty Dillon would like to win the race, but it's probably just not going to happen. Not saying it can't happen, because we've seen guys like him running up front at some point, but more than likely they're not going to win, and they're just trying to get a really strong finish for the kind of equipment they're in. And that's kind of their strategy. They just roll around in the back, which makes them pretty safe plays. Guys like Keselowski, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Truex, Blaney, I mean, they're just going to be aggressive up top, and they can very easily get into a wreck. So keep that in mind when you're rostering these guys. They are not safe. I would not roster someone like Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Keselowski in cash games at all. Joey Logano maybe just because he's like really, really good at Talladega, but even then it's pushing it. I think the highest I would go in cash games is probably Ryan Blaney 9,100, just because he feels pretty safe starting 14th, but even then it is a bit risky. So if you in cash games, I have no issues just going with the like the guy starting 25th and back. I think that's very, very safe, but Ryan Blaney does give me a little bit of interest in playing him in cash games, but it goes against my rules, so I probably wouldn't do it, but he's very interesting, but he's one of my favorite tournament plays. But anyway, just to finish off with Chase Elliott, he's pretty expensive here, but price shouldn't be much of an issue because you can just easily stack the back guys, and they're some of the best plays on these slates, so don't really worry about guys' prices too much. Don't try to even out your lineup with $0 remaining because you're probably not building the best lineups in the world if you're doing that. Now, I do realize I did price these guys up a little bit, so maybe you are kind of evening them out, but I've not tried to make lineups yet, but Chase Elliott, he's a fine play, starting 10th. He could very well win this race, so he's definitely interesting to me. Joey Logano, 10,300. He is starting 8th. Big fan of Team Penske at super speedways, especially Talladega, because they run really well here. And if you guys remember in the June race, I said I like Team Penske quite a bit. I would not be shocked if they just run a train up front. If they go 1, 2, 3, you could also make that 1, 2, 3, 4 if you throw an MDB as well. And that's what happened for a decent amount of the race. I forget how long MDB was up there, but they were 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 at one point, and for a majority of the race, it was either Joey Logano up front or it was Ryan Blaney up front, and then it was Brett Keselowski running in third, and they were just running a train, and I would be shocked if that's not what happens again. I'm kind of hoping Ryan Blaney is the guy that gets up front, but it'll probably be Joey Logano early on just because he's going to be closer to the front than Ryan Blaney. It could also be Brett Keselowski as well. But big fan of Team Penske here. Now, I'm actually going to put this out of order, but if you look at the best average running positions here at Talladega in the past 6 races, the top 3 are all Team Penske cars. You got Joey Logano first with a running position of 7.3, Blaney with an average running position of 9th, and Brett Keselowski with an average running position of 10.6. So they typically run up front here, and it's always, if you're not going to be up front, it's going to be pretty risky because you're in a very dicey range of guys trying to get to the front. But if you got the guy in front, unless you're getting turned, you're probably in a pretty safe spot. So that's the upside there with Joey Logano. He's been very good here. I mean, he's just been so good at Talladega. He's made 4 recent optimal lineups. He's averaging over 50 DraftKings points per race here. The best average drive rating, 4 top 5s, the most laps led per race, and he's also good at all super speedways. Better at Talladega than he is at Daytona, but overall very good super speedway racer. So Joey Logano, I like him quite a bit. Kevin Harvick, 10,100. He's starting 5th. Not a big fan of Kevin Harvick. His strategy for plate races for the most part is kind of just to fall back a bit and ride around and try to get a strong finish. And it's not like really Kevin Harvick's hurting for a win here. Well, maybe I should take that back. It is a new round of the playoffs. Not like a new round from last week, but still from the last week, it's a new round. He did not win last week, so yeah, I guess he would want to win, but I think he'll be still fine overall. But not really the greatest plate racer on the road. He's starting 5th. He's got an average finish of 19.5 here, 0 wins, 1 top 5, some laps led. It would surprise me if he got up front a little bit and led some laps, but again, laps led points really aren't going to mean much here. It's all about the place differential and the finishing position, and there's just not a lot of upside here starting 5th. I'd much rather play Joey Logano and Chase Elliott, or rather play some guys below him as well. And overall, just looking at his past 10 races at super speedways, it's not that impressive either. So Kevin Harvick, not really a guy I'm too interested. I feel pretty good about not having much Kevin Harvick exposure. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have Brett Keselowski at 9,900. He is starting 7th, and he's just part of the Team Penske clan that I have quite a bit of interest in here. Now, Keselowski's kind of weird where before he was a fantastic plate racer, like pretty much the best in the entire series. Now, he's just been getting caught up in wrecks. He's got a super good average running position of 10.6, like I mentioned at Talladega, but he just really can't get very much strong finishes. He does have a win here recently, but 1 top 5, only 1 top 10, 2 top 15s, and only 3 top 20s, so he can get up front, but his track record at super speedways the past 10 races is pretty ugly. With an average finish of 25th, only averaging 8.6 DraftKings points per race, 0 top 5s, and only 1 top 10, but I think he'll be okay here. I do like Team Penske, and I feel like he's going to be the lowest owned Team Penske car, so if you want to get different tournaments, I don't mind that either. He is starting 7th, only 1 spot ahead of Joey Logano, so I think he's totally a fine option. Price doesn't really matter, but he's a little bit cheaper than Joey Logano as well, so I don't mind using some Brett Keselowski because I do think he will be lower owned of all the Team Penske drivers, even including MDB. Then dropping down to Denny Hamlin, 9,700. He is starting first. And guys, I just don't play drivers starting first at super speedways. Maybe because it's Denny Hamlin. If he leads like 60 laps and he gets the top 5, or if he wins the race, which would not surprise me, he's very good at super speedways. Yeah, I mean, there's an off chance he can make the optimal, but I remember Ricky Stenhouse, he started on the pole. I can't remember if it was Daytona or Talladega, but he ended up winning the race starting on the pole, and he still didn't make the optimal. So I think it's more likely than not, or it's more unlikely than it is. You guys know what I mean. I don't think he's going to make the optimal lineup. Sorry, I get my words jumbled there, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And just so it doesn't sound like I'm just making stuff up and going off of my own bias here, let's pull up some stuff I have just on my Patreon. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek here. So if we look at the starting position track stats, the guy that is starting first at Talladega, he's only averaging 30 DraftKings points per race. And the lower you go, typically the more DraftKings points they score. If we sort this by the most DraftKings points scored per race, the average starting position is 33rd, 25th, 20th, 9th, 40th, 30th. You don't see pretty much the 1 spot, the 2 spot, 3 spot, the 4 spot, and so on. So you pretty much want to use guys in the back. And if we look at the previous optimal lineups here at Talladega, we also never see guys starting that close up to the front most races. Like the most recent race here in June, highest starting position guy was Ryan Blaney in 12th. And the race before that, it was 9th place. The race before that, it was 8th. The race before that, it was 4th. Again, that's a little bit up there, but I don't mind using some of these guys in tournaments. One before that was 7th. And then 3rd, which Joey Logano, he's one of those guys that I don't mind using up front. So keep in mind the guys that are showing up front typically don't make the optimal lineup often, although there is some outliers, but we really just don't typically see the guys starting in first. So I definitely think Hamlin would be a strong fan candidate. I think I might just throw a couple of lineups in with him just in case, because he is good at Talladega. Average finish of 11.2, 3 top 5s here recently. Not a lot of laps led, but he's a very good super speedway racer. Better at Daytona than he is at Talladega, but I still think he's worth just throwing in a couple lineups. If you're playing one lineup, do not even think about using Denny Hamlin. If you're making 3 lineups, don't even think about using Denny Hamlin. If you're making 20 lineups, you probably don't want to think about using Denny Hamlin. But if you're putting 150 like me, I might throw him in like 1 to 3% of my lineups just in case he came out, led 100 laps and won, because it's possible. It is. But I do think a Team Penske driver is probably going to get up front at some point and lead some laps. Kyle Busch, 9,500. He's starting 6th. Just not that great of a super speedway racer, kind of like Kevin Harvick. I mean, no top 5s here recently, no wins, only 1 top 10, 2 top 15s, and 3 top 20s. And he's starting 6th, so it's kind of an ugly spot here. He's not that great at Daytona either. I mean, Kyle Busch just really excited me here at Talladega this weekend. But Brendan Gaughan at 9,500. I am super happy they priced him up to $9,500, almost $10,000 for Brendan Gaughan. I think people are going to see that price tag and probably say, no, thank you. And to that, I say thank you, because that's going to make him a little bit lower owned than he should. I still think a lot of people are going to play him. Good chance he's pretty much one of, if not the highest owned driver on the slate. I could see Stenhouse being the highest owned driver, or at least close to it, but Gaughan's still the best play on the slate, guys. Price does not matter. You can easily fit in Brendan Gaughan. I plugged my projections into the Fantasy Cruncher Optimizer, and it gave me like Gaughan in, I want to say, like 90% of my lineups, and it was not bad at all fitting him in. It was very, very easy to do. So do not let the price tag scare you. Let it scare other people. He is one of the best plays, if not the best play on the entire slate. His downside is 3 fantasy points. Meanwhile, someone like Denny Hamlin, if he happens to crash out early, he could end up scoring like negative 30-some fantasy points. And just to show you guys an example of that, I have a heat map on here which shows you the how much points they would score from where they start to where they finish, not including any dominator points. So let's say Denny Hamlin, he's in the pool, and he finishes dead last and 39th. He's getting negative 33 fantasy points, and he could very easily wreck out. He is not immune to wrecking out. But if Brendan Gaughan was the guy that finished last in this race, he is scoring at worst 3 fantasy points, or I'm sorry, at least at the worst 5 fantasy points, which is nearly 30-some points better than Denny Hamlin if he happens to be one of the first few cars to wreck out. So that's the safety Brendan Gaughan gives you. He also gives you an insane amount of upside as well. And this guy, I mean, I've seen him ran in the top 5 before at Talladega. Not saying he's going to get a top 5 finish, but it's certainly possible, and this is his last race. So he's definitely going to make a splash here, but let's say he gets a top 10 finish. That would be about 64 fantasy points. So he's got a ton of upside here, and he could very easily score for 70 fantasy points. And like I said, he's been great at super speedways, and if you're looking at his numbers at Talladega, he's averaging 42 DraftKings points per race. Average finish of 18.2, which starting near 40th, we will take it each and every single time. Looking at his numbers at Super Speedways overall, average finish of 15.9, nearly 50 DraftKings points per game. So Brendan Gaughan, that price tag does not worry me in the slightest. You can certainly sign me up for him this weekend. One of the best plays on the entire slate, if not the best play. Martin Truex Jr. at 9,300. I feel like you can just kind of cross him off your list for the most part. It's going to take an exceptional day for Martin Truex to make the optimal. He is just not good at super speedways, and especially Talladega. He's got an average finish of 23.7 here, a drive rating of 69.1. And the finishes are just super sad for Truex. He's got 0 top 5, 0 top 10, 0 top 15s, and only 1 top 20 finish. 1 top 20 finish. That is just dreadful. I feel like at the past 10 races at super speedways, gets a little bit better if you throw in some Daytona numbers, but even then it's pretty ugly for Truex, and not someone I really have much interest in at all starting third. I hope he has ownership because I think those are kind of just dead lineups for the most part. Ryan Blaney, 9,100. He's starting 14th. This is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Like I said, I prefer guys starting in the back, but I'm going to take some shots with guys starting near the front, like in the teens and up, like 15th place and up. And Ryan Blaney is going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate here. He's won back-to-back races at Talladega, one here in June. He led 63 laps, which led all drivers. And look, I like Team Penske quite a bit here. So Blaney, 9,100, starting 14th. I think he is an elite play here. Like I said, he's won the past 2 races, an average running position of 9th, a drive rating near 100. He's got 2 top 5s, 22.5 laps led per race, which I believe is second most, only behind teammate Joey Logano. So Ryan Blaney, you can certainly sign me up for him. He's great at super speedways, and he almost won the Daytona 500 earlier in the season as well. So I think Blaney is an excellent play. And he also got back on track last week after a bit of a scuffle to start the playoffs. He did make the optimal lineup at Las Vegas last week. So definitely back on the Blaney train again. William Byron, 8,900. He's starting 21st. He actually won that race at Daytona just about a month ago. And I wouldn't say he's the best super speedway racer in the world, but he's got a pretty good average running position, but he just tends to be one of those guys that gets caught up in the wrecks, so you really can't project that. But starting 21st, you get some PD upside, and I mean, he very well could get a top 5 here, top 10. It's kind of just random when it gets to the end, but if he can avoid the early wrecks, he should be able to have a pretty strong finish starting 21st. So definitely like William Byron, but one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, if not my favorite play. I love Brendan Gaughan, but just from an upside standpoint of potentially winning the race and leading laps and starting in the back, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. pretty much checks each and every single box for me this weekend. A bit pricey, 8,800, but again, price does not matter this week, and he is a rock star at Talladega. Past 6 races here, he's got 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, a lot of laps led as well. And I think last time we were at Talladega, so it would have been 7 races ago, but I'm pretty sure he did very well in that 7th race, because I remember him having more laps led per race than this, and I think he had 4 top 5s and also a win as well. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is super good at super speedways, which is kind of weird because it's a track that has a ton of wrecks, and the guy that wrecks a ton, Ricky Stenhouse, but he doesn't wreck at these types of tracks. It's weird, but he's typically the guy that's moving to the front, and he's leading laps here and potentially contending for the win. He finished 2nd here in June, only right behind Ryan Blaney. It was a very, very close finish, and he had one of the best cars in the field, and he moved his way up from the back to the front multiple times. And if you look at his numbers at Super Speedway, they're pretty good all around as well. And he actually ranks 3rd in my power rankings model this week too. So he is popping up very high for me. He's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. I want to say he started 21st in the June race, and I want to say he was a little bit over 30% owned. So I think he's a fantastic player, and he just typically runs very, very well at Talladega. Jimmy Johnson, not one of my favorite drivers to use at super speedways. Again, it's more so luck than anything, but he just tends to be one of those guys that gets caught up in the mess, and he's just had some unlucky runs this year. And if you're looking at his numbers at Dega, average finish of 21.2, running position of 18.8, 0 top 5s, 1 top 10, 3 top 15s. He's kind of just a fine pivot play. I think William Byron, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Eric Almirola are going to soak up a bit of ownership here, so Johnson would be the pivot there, and everyone has an equal chance of wrecking. So I think he's an okay pivot, but that's just about as far as that goes. Now, Eric Almirola, 8,500. He is starting 11th. He is one of my favorite tournament plays, right up there with Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano on this slate. I'm hoping people are going to be scared off of him starting 11th, but this guy is just super duper elite at Talladega. He's averaging 53 DraftKings points per race with an average finish, which is insane to me, and this is not a small 2-race sample size. Past 6 races, average finish of 4.8. That's almost unheard of at most regular tracks. Well, I shouldn't say unheard of, but some guys are pretty close to that. But at a super speedway, That's pretty hard to do. He's got a win here recently. He's got 4 top 5s. In the past 6 races, he's 100% of the time finished inside the top 10. He's made a lot of recent optimal lineups. And he also finished 3rd here in June backwards when he got spun at the end. And he actually passed the finish line backwards, which was insane. So Aric Almirola starting 11th. I think he's a pretty good play here. I wouldn't really worry about him. Wouldn't worry about him too much starting 11th. I think he should be able to contend for a top 10 like he's done pretty much every single time. Now, his strategy in June was to fall back early on and ride around most of the day, so don't be alarmed if he's killing your lineups all day, because I remember getting tweets about Aric Almirola killing their lineups, and then the guy ended up finishing 3rd. His strategy was, I'm going to ride around the back until the very end, until I have to make a move. I'm going to let these idiots wreck in front of me, and then my job will get a bit easier. Now, the problem was no one wrecked, but he still was able to make his way up very soon. Like, at a track like Talladega, you can gain and lose and lose about 20 spots very, very quickly, so I don't worry too much if Almirola happens to run that same strategy once again. I think he's a fantastic play here. Clint Bowyer, he's starting 9th. Not really too interested in Clint. I mean, if you want to get a little just contrarian, I guess it's okay if you think he could randomly get a top 5, but it's mostly just going to be luck if he does. He's only averaging 5 DraftKings points per race here, an average finish of 24.2, 1 top 20 finish, and he's averaging negative 17 place differential spots per race here, so not really too interested in Clint Bowyer, maybe outside of just a couple of lineups. Like, I'm building 150 lineups. I'm probably going to have exposure to almost every single driver, maybe besides Truex this week, and maybe a couple of the other guys starting up front that I don't really like maybe Kurt Busch, but even then he runs pretty well here. So, I don't know. I feel like just Clint Bowyer, not something I'm really going to have too much interest in, maybe besides a few lineups. Kurt Busch, 8,100. He is starting 2nd. He actually won last week. Now, he got a bit lucky, but he was still able to hold his own at the end, and he got a win in his home track, so good for Kurt Busch. But starting 2nd, in a dicey spot here for a super speedway now. He's pretty good at Talladega, I'll give him that. Average finish of 14th, running position of 10.9, a drive rating of near 100, 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, 22 laps led per race. But guys, these numbers aren't enough to make the optimal at a super speedway starting 2nd. So I feel like he's a pretty strong fade. It's going to be really tough for him to work out. He's got to win the race pretty much. If you think Kurt Busch is going to win the race, yeah, you could throw him in a couple of lineups, but I just don't really see it happening. Even if he does win, he's not going to outscore a guy like Tyler Reddick or even Ty Dillon or a guy like Brendan Gaughan if they gain a whole bunch of spots. Eric Jones, 8,000. He is starting 16th. I think he's fine. He's a pretty solid plate racer. He was doing very well in the Daytona race about a month ago. And then at Talladega, he was running pretty well as well, and he had a pretty strong finish, if I remember correctly. I need to look it up exactly where he finished. Yeah, he finished 5th. So starting 16th, I think he's a fine tournament option. Wouldn't go there in cash games, but starting 16th, he's kind of in that range where do I really want to play him? Do I really want to fade him? And so that makes him a pretty strong tournament play. Then dropping down to the 7K range, we have one of the best plays on the slate in Tyler Reddick at 7,900. Now, if you remember back to the Daytona race in the summer, he had one of the stupidest moves he could have done, especially as a rookie. Definitely didn't help himself out there to make some friends. He threw that stupid block on Kyle Busch just a little bit too early. I get it, Tyler Reddick wanted to make a big splash and win the race, but it was just a bit too early to throw that kind of a block, and it ended up causing the first of many big wrecks to end that race. But starting 30th, he was running pretty well at Daytona, and he also ran pretty well here at Talladega earlier in the year, too. He had an average running position of 13.5, finished 20th, but he was running pretty well, and he also led 19 laps in that race, too. I'm not expecting him to get up front lead laps, but starting 30th, he's got top 10 upside here, so I think he's certainly playable and just a pretty good PD play. I expect him to be pretty high owned. Bubba Wallace, he's a pretty good plate racer. Now, in general, he's better at Daytona than he is at Talladega. But if we're looking at his super speedway numbers the past 10 races, he's got 7 top 20 finishes, 5 top 15s, a top 10, and a top 5. Like I said, better at Daytona than he is at Talladega, but starting 27th, he's a pretty good PD play. And I think most of the ownership here is going to go to Tyler Reddick, so I think Bubba Wallace is just the direct pivot off of him if you want lower ownership, and he should be totally fine here. He's capable of getting a top 15, capable of getting top 20, so don't mind Bubba Wallace. Alex Bowman, 7,500, he's starting 4th. I feel like he's one of those other guys you can feel pretty good about not having too much of. I'm not sure if I'd full fade him because he does run pretty well at super speedways. It's just a matter of finishing the race, and he tends to be one of those guys that happens to get caught up. And one thing I've noticed is that the the Hendrick Motorsports drivers all tend to get caught up in the wrecks. They run well at these types of tracks, but they just get a bit unlucky. Byron, Johnson, Bowman, Chase Elliott, they just get a little bit unlucky there. But Bowman, starting fourth, again, he's probably going to have to win this race, which is something I can't really bank on, so maybe sprinkle him in a couple of lineups just in case. Because I believe William Byron, he started sixth at Daytona, and I probably said the same thing about him, where he's going to have to win the race to be optimal. I just don't think that's likely. Well, it's not likely that he won the race, but he ended up winning the race, and he did make the optimal lineup. So you could see a similar situation there with Alex Bowman. Austin Dillon, 7,300. He's starting 12th. I think he's an okay play here. He's halfway decent at super speedways. He's got 3 top 20s, 2 top 15s, 1 top 10. Starting 12th, it should keep his ownership low, so I think he's an interesting tournament play. But he's not going to grade out too well there at that starting position. And then dropping down to MDB, 7,200. He's starting 13th, so he's not like full on Team Penske, but he's pretty much Team Penske, so that does give me some interest. Now, the guy just can't buy a good finish here. He runs pretty well. Average running position of 18.8, which isn't great, but we've seen him be able to run towards the front here at Super Speedways, and he's got an average finish of 27.8, which is horrendous. He just tends to get caught up in the wrecks, but MDB starting 13th, I think he's a pretty solid tournament play. Pretty decent at super speedways. He's been better at Daytona than he has at Talladega, but it's just a matter of being able to finish the race, which is not something he's really been able to do too much at Talladega. So I think he's a fine tournament play, but not someone I'd go with in cash games. Christopher Bell, he's 7,000, starting 22nd. I think he's okay. I don't really think he's going to be that high owned. I think guys like LaJoie, Ty Dillon are going to soak up quite a bit of ownership in the similar price range, and also Ryan Newman's got a great track record at super speedways as well. But Christopher Bell, I think he's okay now. If you guys remember in Talladega, I like Christopher Bell quite a bit. He was starting in the 30s, and at one point he was up front, but on the restart, he ended up, it was like some kind of violation. Did he take control of the restart? Or no, he pushed, I forget who it was, but he pushed because he was on the outside, and he pushed the guy that was on the inside below the yellow line, and he got a penalty for that. Then he never really ended up recovering, and I got some hate tweets on Twitter or YouTube saying, thanks for the Christopher Bell advice. It's like, I didn't know he was going to do something stupid near the end of the race. He was running pretty well, and like starting in the 30s, he was an auto play, but starting 22nd, I think he's fine for tournaments, and like I said, he was able to get up front, looked pretty good. He had an average running position of 15.4, which was much better than his 29th place finish, so I think he's an okay play, but not someone I'm going to get too excited about, but he's a nice pivot off of some of the chalkier plays. Dropping out of the 6K range, we have Ryan Newman at 6,800. He is starting 19th, and look, Ryan Newman is just a guy that knows how to stay alive long enough at super speedways to grab a good finish, and he's been pretty good at these types of tracks. Average Draftkings points of 45 points per race, average finish of 11.3 compared to a 22.5 average running position. So kind of goes to show you that he kind of rides around the back a little bit. Then at the end, he tends to grab a good finish, which is all I ask for from my drivers. And it feels like at super speedways, if you're winning money early on in the race, there's a good chance you're probably not going to be winning money at the end of the race. And I just spit all over my laptop, which is disgusting. But Ryan Newman, I think he's fine. He's got 2 top 5s here recently, 4 top 10s, which is very, very impressive. And if you're looking at the past 10 races at super speedways, average finish of 13.8, 2 top 5s, 6 top 10s, and 7 top 15s. So Newman, I think he's a solid tournament play. Wouldn't go there in cash games starting 19th, but definitely fine in tournaments. Corey LaJoie, 6,700. He's starting 29th. He is great at super speedways. He is just so good at riding around the back long enough to grab a good finish. That is Corey LaJoie's strategy at super speedways. We're not going to see him riding up front. He's going to chill in the back, wait for some wrecks, and grab a good finish. Average finish of 16.5 compared to an average running position of 27, which just goes to show you that's exactly what he does, is what I just said. He's got a top 10 finish, 2 top 15s, 3 top 20s, averaging 17 positive place differential spots per race. And actually, everyone in the 6K range has got some good average PD spots per race. And LaJoie, just overall super speedways, very good, averaging about 45 DraftKings points per race, 3 top 10 finishes, and overall someone you can definitely trust here at Talladega. Ryan Preece, 6,500, only 3 career races here, but they've gone pretty well for him. He's got an average finish of 12th, averaging nearly 55 DraftKings points per race, a top 5, a top 10, 2 top 15s, and 3 top 20s. So Ryan Preece, I think, is a pretty solid option. Ty Dillon, 6,300. So at some point, he's going to stop getting strong finishes at Talladega, but he's just been so good here. He's averaging 45 DraftKings points per race, average finish of 13.3. No top 5s, only 1 top 10, but 5 top 15s and 6 top 20 finishes. He just knows how to have a good finish at Talladega. And again, that's all I can ask for from my guys, is get a good finish. And that's exactly what he does, so I think he's one of the safest plays on the entire slate. If you expand this to the past 10 races of super speedways, average finish of 13.7, 1 top 5, 4 top 10s, 7 top 15s, and 8 top 20s. So yeah, Ty Dillon's going to be a pretty strong play on this slate. Cole Custer, so he's only got 3 career races of super speedways in the Cup Series. He's got an average finish of 29.7, and just not really a good track record, but the average running position of 18.4 is much better, and he's just one of those guys that's getting a little bit unlucky with wrecks here, so you can't put too much into it. His first race at Dega, he did finish 22nd, average running position of 12th, which is pretty good, but starting 18th, he's just a tournament play. He's a pivot off of the chalky guys. I think a lot of these guys in the 6K range are going to be pretty popular. Ty Dillon, Ryan Preece, Corey LaJoie, and Ryan Newman. So Cole Custer could be a decent way to get a little bit off of the chalk. And then we have Chris Buescher, who I believe made the optimal lineup here in June, and he's a pretty good restrictor plate racer. If you're looking at his numbers, averaging 36 DraftKings points per race, has a top 10, 2 top 15s, and 4 top 20s. And if you expand this to the past 10 races of super speedways, average finish of 15.9, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 5 top 15s, and 7 top 20s. The only issue with him is he's starting 15, so he's a tournament play only, but he's one of those guys that knows how to get there knows how to stay alive until the very end. So Chris Buescher, he's a fine tournament play. I don't think he's going to be too chalky for where he's starting, and it might be able to help you get a little bit different. Matt Kent's at 5,900. He's starting 20th. Past 2 races of super speedways this season, he's got an average finish of 34th and an average running position of 23.9. Not a huge sample size, but not someone I'm really too interested in anyway, starting 20th. Daniel Suarez, 5,800. He's starting 31st. I know he's in a lawnmower, guys, and I don't think I've made that lawnmower joke in quite some time, but he's okay. I mean, you guys know that super speedway tracks, I mean, it kind of just evens out these cars. And we saw Daniel Suarez at the Daytona race. I was getting a bunch of tweets about this because everyone thought it was funny, but he was leading the pack for quite some time. When people were pitting, he happened to be the first car in the lead pack, and he was picking up some laps led, which was really funny to see Daniel Suarez doing that. So that's the kind of things that can happen at Daytona and Talladega. Starting 31st, he's a fine PD play. It's about as simple as that. Michael McDowell starting 24th. So he's better at Daytona than he is at Talladega, but he should still be fine here. But much better track record at Daytona. But if we're looking at McDowell's numbers, only averaging 12 DraftKings points per race here. Average finish at 27.5, running position at 24.8. Does have a top 5, but only 2 top 20 finishes. But if you expand this to add some Daytona numbers, he's got 6 top 20s, 5 top 15s, 2 top 10s, and 2 top 5s. McDowell, I think, is a decent cheap option. John Hunter Nemechek, he comes in at only 5,600. And he only has a 3-race sample size of super speedways in his Cup career, but he's done very well at them so far, like some very strong numbers. An average finish of 10th, averaging nearly 50 DraftKings points per race. He's got a top 10 and 3 top 15 finishes. Each time he's raced at a super speedway this year, he's finished inside the top 15. Not sure if that trend will continue, but from what he's done so far, it's definitely been very impressive. So I think John Hunter Nemechek is certainly playable for me, and he's pretty cheap as well. But again, price doesn't really matter for the most part. Then after John Hunter Nemechek, you get into these scrub drivers and Justin Haley, James Davison, Timmy Hill, Joey Gase, Quinn Half, Brennan Poole, and Cody Ware, who's going to be filling in for JJ Yeley from what I saw. Because I originally had JJ Yeley on here, and DraftKings didn't give him a price, and I saw the updated entry list, and I saw it was Cody Ware instead of JJ Yeley. So I'll have to see if that's 100% confirmed, because I guess I didn't really do a big information dive that it was completely confirmed, but it was on the entry list, so I'd have to assume I wasn't being lied to. But all these guys are playable if you think it's going to be a wreck fest. If I'm playing cash games, I'm not playing any of these guys just in case it's not a wreck fest, because then you're dead. Although they do have some pretty safe floors, but again, if nobody's wrecking, they're not going to outscore the guys up front, because those guys up front did not wreck, and they probably finished close to the front, so kind of just kills that strategy. So I'll have some lineups where I probably play a couple of these guys just in case, but they're not going to be too exciting for me. I much prefer the guys that are starting the back, like Corey LaJoie, Ryan Preece, Ty Dillon, even Michael McDowell, John Nemechek. Those guys actually have top 10 upside. Meanwhile, these guys, you need some wrecks for them to get into the top 20. It's certainly possible, and we've seen it happen before, but I'd just be a little bit wary, because last Talladega race, not putting all my stock into just one race sample size, but that strategy did not work out because the big one happened until the very end. Now, if this was Daytona, I feel a bit more comfortable doing that, but even then at Daytona, I'm probably going to not use those guys in cash games. I'd rather just use the guys like Ty Dillon, LaJoie, Reddick, those kind of guys starting the back, compared to guys like Davison, Haley, and Timmy Hill. But I think that's pretty much it for the video, guys. If you made it all the way through, please let me know. This was probably a pretty long video, but you guys know I like to get a little bit talky when we talk about super speedways and short tracks because I just love talking about them. They get me excited, so I don't mind just yip-yapping about it. But yeah, we're at about 40 minutes right now, so this was a longer video. I've been keeping my videos around 25, 30 some minutes recently, but hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, consider that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. I post NFL DFS content as well. I think that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in the next video, and if you want to follow me on social media, do that. If you want to support my content over on Patreon, that's pretty cool too. I do appreciate each and every single person on there. You can hop into the Discord chat as well as getting access to the entire DFS data sheet too. So that'll be it. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys enjoy your Sunday. But we got football Sunday starting at 1, then we got NASCAR starting at 2, so you're going to have to get 2 TVs set up or something on the TV, something on the laptop, something like that. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.